Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today we are
We're
three
three best
friends.
friends.
And we are welcoming back to the podcast Oli Schmitz of Boswell Books,
Hi.
my local bookstore. And we wanted to have Oli on for this special episode to discuss being a bookseller, what it entails, and what you should keep an eye out for on Indie Bookstore Day this coming Saturday. And in April, Indie Bookstore Month. Welcome,
Yeah.
Oli.
Hi, I am so happy to be back on here
You
to
We're
talk
so
about
glad to have you.
the best time of year, indie bookstore time
Ah,
of year.
well, we had you
Um,
on for Murderbot Diaries, and it was one of our best TV Tuesdays, I think,
Mhm.
in our
A really
opinion.
great
So,
one.
I'm
yeah,
so honored to have been part of that. Yeah, I loved talking about like the book to TV adaptation, and I'm extra excited to talk about my now 10 years of being
Oh my
working with books.
gosh.
Yeah.
that's amazing.
You are such a pro.
Yeah. Well, and it was something that kind of happened organically because off mic, you started talking about your life as a bookseller, and both Laura and I were like, no, come back on the pod and talk about this for all of our listeners.
Oh yeah, because it was toward the holiday season.
Yep.
So I was
Yeah.
like in it.
Hmm.
I was yeah. We had a little off mic chat about just so many things that were going on. And it's wild because when you're living that every day, it's like, oh yeah, this is just what happens on the day to day. But then, people who have maybe like visited bookstores or like imagine what it's like to work in a bookstore, they're like, whoa, what do you mean? What is that?
Yeah. Well, and I think that was kind of my reaction. So, can you tell everyone a little bit about your history as a bookseller over the course of 10 years and what got you into working, at a bookseller and what
Yeah.
your, work entails?
We can maybe even say 20 years because there's a home video of me selling construction paper books on my street, like it was a lemonade stand.
I
I
bet
love
they
it.
were just so well written.
I was hawking them 5 quarters a book, very
Oh,
important currency
Five
measure.
quarters. Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I actually grew up really close to Boswell. My parents' first apartment was just a block away. And it was Schwartz bookstore back then, so I was always visiting the bookstore as a kid. I grew up with like the booksellers who worked the kids section recommending books to me. And like I started asking for a job when I was 9 years old.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
and then when it became legal for me to work in the state of Wisconsin, when I was 15, I got a worker's license. And the very kind and generous owner of the store, who knew I was absolutely obsessed with the place, had me do an interview with an objective party, a manager I hadn't met at the
mm.
store, who thought I would be a good fit. So I worked at Boswell all through high school. And then I worked summers and winters while I was out of state for college. So even like working part-time as a teenager and then essentially part-time seasonal as a college student. There's like not been a year since 2015 that I haven't been on Boswell's payroll. Um, and I literally wrote about that place for my college application essays. And um, it was the thing that I like anticipated missing most when I left
Mm.
for college. And coming back to Milwaukee in 2022 and working full time since then, um, I just like that first year back, I really got more tapped into the like world of indie book selling and the like other people working at the sort of conferences and trade organizations and everything that beyond what I had experienced as a teen, which was like the day to day of indie bookstores, and then we would do um, meetings with publisher representatives that would give us like early copies of books and ask us to review them, which is why I recently moved with 34 was the last count of boxes of books. Um, but it's
Impressive.
worth keeping.
It, as you can see, we agree with you. So-
Yeah. I actually last year read an arc I had been holding on to since 2018 that I had picked up from a publisher rep, and I was like, someday I'm going to get to this. Someday I'm going to
You know
get to
what? That's
this.
incredibly relatable. It makes me feel so much better about my
Yeah.
NetGalley score.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like, listen, if you get to it at some point, and it turned out it's incredible, and that author has a book coming out this year, and I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
And I was late to the party, but that tiny little paperback followed me from like through college moves to apartments and um anyway,
No.
tangent about the books that follow you, but there were so many, and yeah, that's kind of my Boswell history, and like my initial like entry to the book selling world at large was in writing reviews for early copies of books that sometimes would get used by the publisher for promotion, or would just help sell the books in the store. And I became kind of known for my really needlessly elaborate staff recommendation cards.
Well, I was going to ask you about recommendations because I started working at a library a few months ago. And so being a bookseller or being a librarian, like a big part of your job is making recommendations. And a lot of
Yeah.
times they're passive with like displays and stuff like that. So how do you go about like making recommendations? How do you kind of gauge what is the right book? And how do you suggest books or genres that you aren't as familiar with?
Yeah. Um, right off the bat, I can say that it is the most difficult for me to write reviews for the books that I love the most. It
You are
is,
speaking my language
yeah,
right
I will
now.
agonize over it for weeks. Every line of this single paragraph has to be perfect and express my feelings and why the story is meaningful. And then if I just like something, like it's like a 3.5, 4 star, like on, whichever review site you use, that that kind of book is just so much easier because I'd be like, hey, this is what it's about. This is what the author did well. And with books I love, God, it's so hard. I'm
Okay.
just like, this is insane and you have to read it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that actually is what drew me to like doing wild recommendation card art. There's one of my cards that I brought home with me, worked on for 6 hours with an X-Acto knife. So there's actually like a 3D papercraft pirate ship
Cool.
that I, of course, had to do my research and found out that the author based it on a specific era of galleon ship. And so I was like, okay, well, obviously this needs to represent the proportions of a galleon ship for this
Right.
fantasy novel, for this papercraft staff recommendation card. And that way, if my words are inadequate, people will at least look at it. So
I love how deep
for,
you got with that. That's
I
amazing.
oh
mean,
God,
I would be lying if I didn't say sometimes I look at a book and I'm like, who recommended that? Was it Ollie? Because then it does go up in my esteem.
thank you. But I recommend around the place when people ask me, and I even mentioned star ratings before, but like to rate books, I don't compare books against every book I've read.
hmm
Hmm.
I compare books against their like peers in whatever genre they're in
Okay.
and the author's experience. So I'm much more gentle with the debut because I think, oh my God, like if this was written by this same author 5 years later, this could be truly incredible. I'm going to say, like, I think this is a standout. Like, this, I really, really, really want to see where this author is going. So I think I'm more of a forgiving reviewer than most. Also because through this job, I meet authors, I meet editors, I meet
Hmm.
um, people whose job it is to travel the country and represent these books. And, there is a part of me that's hesitant to say anything negative publicly about a particular book. If I think the author's a good person. Um, but you'll see at Boswell Book Company, like reviews around different parts of the store. I have, I think, a pretty nice looking recommendation card for a book that was really popular, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree.
Hmm.
Super cozy. Oh my goodness. Read it in one sitting on a rainy day, kicking my little feet, desiring cinnamon buns and coffee. Um, do I think that the prose was incredible or that the like emotional writing was top notch? No. I enjoyed it though. And compared to the like cozy fantasy, like low stakes, this is all like emotional and like community level problems books. Oh my goodness, like definitely like top marks.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm never going to compare something like that to like another one of my recommendations is for The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson, which came out last year. Antonia Hodgson is an award-winning mystery thriller writer of
Hmm.
historical, and this was her first ever fantasy novel. Super complex, like world society stakes, like narrative twists like with who and what the narrator is and like world building and like a flow that was just off the charts for me. I'm not going to say like, hey, these two books are for the same audience or the same mood. So I definitely recommend by mood. I always ask
Hmm.
people when I'm recommending in person, what's something recent that you read that you really enjoyed? That can be any genre. And do you know what you liked about it? Because if you liked a nonfiction book that was a page turner, you might like a lot of other genres that are page turners as well. Like if
Hmm.
you liked a book because of the topic, you can explore further with that topic. But I really try to pinpoint what people like, and I make my recommendations of books that I have personally read based on which audience I think they're intended for.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Um,
I dig that.
for books I haven't read, I actually have a kind of insane memory for my coworkers' recommendations. Like it'll surprise them. I do floor displays for the store, so I arrange displays for a theme. Um, and like right now, we have an indie bookstore one that's all bookstore themed, and we have a spring display that's like outdoors, gardening, nature, all the books with the green covers that make brain go burr. And we have an Arab American Heritage Month table with all books from Arab authors across all genres. Um, and when I'm pulling books for those displays, I don't want it to just be, here's what Ollie thinks you should read related to these topics. So I'll be like, oh, hey, to my coworker, do you still have your recommendation card for this book? And they'll be like, did I read that? And I'm like, yeah, I had your recommendation card on this iteration of the display 3 years ago. You gave it a rave review, and you really, because I'm working with people who read tons and tons of books as well. And they're like, that's actually wild. Yes, I did read that. And how did you remember what I said about it? Um, I am a little bit bookstore crazy in that, and I don't use that term lightly, in that I literally dream about working. I have to ask coworkers if I had a conversation with them about the bookstore, like not often, but like it happened this week, so it's very timely for me that I had a
That's
dream
actually
about,
adorable, honestly.
yeah,
So they're
God,
like, I've only ever wanted to work here, and I did get my dream job. Thank you.
yeah.
Like,
Oh my goodness. It like in college I had a nightmare that we double booked N.K. Jemisin and both Green brothers, John and Hank Green, in 2018. And
here's the
that the
thing.
same
That would be
day,
an
I think,
excellent double
I
book.
honestly think N.K. Jemisin would be like, yeah, we're doing it. We're just going to do it
yeah,
live. We're
I
all
can
going to be amazing.
see
It's going to be
the Hank,
great.
but in the
Hank and
store we would
John
not
duo
be able to
loving it.
fit that number of people.
We would,
And the real
yeah.
nightmare, one of the children's section bookshelves collapsed.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
but like this week I had one where I asked a coworker to help me with rearranging the hockey romance display books because that
Super
display
hot.
is shifting back into the section to make room for a graduation table. I
Hmm.
literally went into work like a few days later and was like, hey, did I talk to you about getting these back into the romance section, or was that a dream? And they were like, you have not mentioned that to me. are you joking? And I was like, no, I literally had a dream that we had a conversation and figured it out. So it's really good for us to touch base.
Just wait, it's going to turn out to be someone just like gaslighting you and being like, we did not talk about it. Those are
It
not.
was never a dream.
They could, and it would be tough to tell. But yeah, the layout of the store and the like books that coworkers have recommended just like show up in my subconscious a lot. So when I'm recommending books to people and I'm recommending books that I haven't personally read, I can usually pick up on like, okay, what kind of reader are you closer to? Like, what's the Venn diagram overlap of other booksellers' tastes? Or like, what's something that you point out that you're looking for that I can find a like good fit recommendation for based on what I've heard about it. Like we can do this right now. If you want to role play right now, ask me about anything that is not sci-fi, fantasy, or nature.
Come on, that's the only things I read.
Those are quite a few of the things I read,
Okay,
but I'm trying to think. Oh,
I'll
wait.
give you one because people often ask me at the library for like lighthearted recommendations, and a lot of people like Remarkably Bright Creatures.
Ooh, my store owner Daniel has a recommendation for a book that has been out in paperback for some years now. It's called The Music of Bees.
Okay.
And it is, I believe, a recently widowed person who's working kind of a dead-end job. And the course of the story is she helps two young people in the town discover the wonder of bees and beekeeping. And then there's also an environmental message to the story. But it is just like really well written, but like all of the like good feelings literature in there. And like the environmental connection might be a good pull for Remarkably Bright Creatures. If it is the animal story, my manager Jason has a recommendation on a book called The Boy and the Dog, which was, I believe, translated from Japanese.
Yep.
Yeah, have you read that one or know of it?
I know of that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's after a national disaster, a dog trying to make his way
Find
back
its
to
way
his
home.
human and has an impact on the people that he meets along the way. And yeah, so those really like emotional, kind of like you know that the author's going to let you feel good, and let you have a connection. And then I think for more of like the human side of it and the human connection, in addition to Music of Bees, I would say All the Lonely People, which
Okay.
was a book club pick. I'm forgetting the exact description of the book, but I know that it is about, human connection in the modern world. And this might be the description for this book or the description for another similar book, but I think a man is living alone and his kids are worried that he doesn't have friends. So he makes up being friends with his neighbors and then has to actually befriend his neighbors before his kids visit.
Oh,
Kind of
Um,
like a man called Uva, but a little bit more
yeah.
lying. So,
yeah. Um, So yeah, that's sort of like the route I would take is like, oh, I remember the name of the person who did this. I can, if they're working that day, I might even pull them over.
Sure.
Um, like I don't really read straight romance. But I have coworkers who do, who can be like, okay, do you want this to be like a side plot? Do you want like a classic like romance plot? Are you looking for yeah, just like various things. People always get embarrassed coming to the bookstore, or not always, but they're very frequently, and being like, I don't know if it's okay to ask this, but like, do you guys have smut? I'm like, let me
That's for
call in
your
our
Kindles. People
specialist.
do not ask in person.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, let me call in the specialist. I know exactly who you need to talk to.
what's our spice
Um,
level here? What are we
Yeah, it's
dealing
like
with?
spice level, gender of participants, number of participants. Are you looking for fantasy? Are you looking for mafia? Are you looking for like modern day contemporary, but it's still like like the world is normal, but the relationship is super spicy. Um,
I love that
yeah,
people are
it's, you
nervous
know,
about it though. That's very funny.
yeah, oh my God. It's so freaking. I was actually at the dentist the other day, and I won't say which dentist to protect the identity of this person, but there was a person working there. And I was like, "Oh, what do you like to read?" We were talking about books. And she was like, "You don't want to know what I read." And I was like, "Well, by saying that now I do know. Would you like some recommendations?" Like,
I like to read all the sexy time.
yeah.
Uh-huh. I always say that
God.
it was like a beautiful moment because I grew up with my mom reading the $3 Walmart Harlequin romances. And so
Yep.
like I have very little judgment. It's so one of my coworkers was like, I read Katee Roberts. And I was like, that sounds great. I hope you enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Oh my God. And Katee Robert first traditionally published like non-romance novel coming this
Oh,
year. Like I believe called The Tarot Trials. I think there'll be romance in it, but it's under Tor, not Bramble, which is their romance imprint.
interesting.
And it is like a high fantasy. Sorry, I
No,
know too many things. I
no.
keep them. Other people like know directions or skills. Like everyone has something that they know a ton about.
Well, no, and this is fascinating to get into because we love going down these little rabbit holes with you. But
Yeah.
I could
you
keep
talk.
playing the game of rec me a book.
Yeah.
Laura's like,
Oh,
wait, we have a new game. Let's play it for the entire episode.
yep.
So,
Yeah.
well, I am like curious because you talked about Kate Robert and, going under tour versus the imprint. How does, an indie bookstore pick the books that it's holding and kind of what contact does it have with publishers and their relationship with finding books? Like, what does that
Ooh.
look like? Let
Yes,
us
I
peek up
love this
behind the curtains.
because this is actually like if I was like gonna get a job that ha like with like book industry beyond being a bookseller, this would be my dream job. There are these things called publisher reps, publisher representatives. Indie publishing reps usually are by region. Sometimes small publishers will only do like phone calls and virtual meetings across the board, but essentially, um, a publisher, and if they're a big publisher, they might have multiple for different imprints, will have someone whose job it is to deeply know the catalog of books coming out each season,
Wow.
to present that catalog with notes to the independent bookstore partners, to the buyers of those indie bookstores, and help that store make a selection of quantity of things to order, both anticipating sales and which things like they're really excited to represent. So it's kind of like recommending what even ends up in a bookstore.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
For job reasons, like obviously they want the to show their whole catalog in a positive light, but um, they also present things like deals. So some bookstores like Boswell will discount new releases. We have the Boswell Best program where like new and best-selling hardcover books that we select have a 20% off discount year round. Um, and the way we can do that is, oh, hey, we got a publisher rep who offered us an extra discount on buying like 10 copies of this book instead of the original four that we were going to order.
Hmm.
And so now we can pass that discount on. Um, so buyers, depending on the size of a bookstore, you might have multiple for different sections or types of books. Boswell has two. We have a buyer for children's books, so catalog from baby books to YA, and for the entire, all the other adult sections. Smaller bookstores might only have one buyer. Larger bookstores might have buyers that are focused on different sections like fiction, nonfiction, things within that. And you meet with your publisher reps and they tell the buyers brief descriptions of the books, what they're expecting to be big releases, and what they think are like hidden gems that we should still know about. They also are the primary way that we get advanced reading copies and like asked to do reviews. So publisher reps also get to know booksellers at the different stores and say, "Ooh, I have a like horror lover who might be interested in this new gothic fiction coming out from a debut author who like is looking for reviews," or like I need some reads on kids books because it's a little hard to get adults to read kids books, YA sometimes, but like middle grade, those books for chapter books for kids in like elementary school, especially. So it's like, hey, I think this one's really incredible, and if more people knew about it, more kids would love it. Um, so yeah, publisher reps make the spot go round, and we have some really lovely ones who actually started out as booksellers and then became publisher reps. I think Stefan Moorhead is one of our Penguin Random House representatives. Big shout out there. And um, uh, yeah, just is always happy to get us something new from an author if he knows that we really love it, or like listen to our recommendations of books that he hasn't personally read, or recommend things to me that I can work into displays. And yeah, that's kind of how, so like the sales reps are kind of like the recommenders, but they have a specific catalog of things to recommend from to sell things to bookstores.
So I have a piggyback question on
Yeah.
this. So like say you have like certain popular authors like Dave Baldacci or
Hmm.
James Patterson or something like that. So you have to kind of anticipate that those are going to sell
Hmm.
very easily. You're going to have a lot of people requesting those. How do you know like how many to get of that author's newest release,
Hmm.
especially when they're pumping out tons of them every year in their multiple different series? Versus like say you have like a new kids series that is coming out with like the newest book in the series and you're like, oh, that is going to be a big event that we might have, like say it's a fantasy
Hmm.
book or something like that, or a Warrior Cats book. Like it
Yes.
could be something that's a bigger thing that you're like, we might want a pallet's worth of this one. But how many do we
Yeah.
decide to get for like James Patterson when he's releasing 50 this year?
Yeah. So that is a calculation that I am not privy to necessarily.
Okay.
But I know some things go into it, like the sales history of the author. The last time they had a new release or a new release in this specific genre, how many copies did we sell? How many have we sold since it stopped being like a new release and just moved to the
Mhm.
section? Um, did we have anyone in the store who really loved it? There's a new YA fantasy novel that I believe is Irish mythology inspired called
Yes.
Her
Hmm.
Hidden Fire.
Hmm.
That is from a debut author, and
Yep.
two of our booksellers loved it. Did you read it?
It's extremely popular right now.
Oh,
There's
I
tons
didn't
of
know about
holds
this because
for it
like,
at the library.
okay, because I had only heard about it from my coworkers leading up to its release, but something like that, or the re-release of Christopher Buehlman's Between Two Fires
Hmm. Hmm.
blew up online, but behind the scenes bookseller wise, like we'd been like talking it up for a while ahead of its release. And really quick before I forget, you mentioned Warrior Cats, and I do have to say that one of the Indie Bookstore Day exclusives is the official Warrior Cats RPG, because in the backs of the books of like the second and third series, because I read up to like the third series when I was a kid,
Hmm.
they used to have like little guides for like little mini Warrior Cats adventures.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was actually my first ever exposure to RPGs. So they have created the official like Warrior Cats role-playing guide that is a limited
Amazing.
release for
That's
Independent
beautiful.
Bookstore Day. Um,
I
so
really
if
want Hannah and I to cover those books.
She's pushing for that to be our next. You were like, it's so hard to get adults to read these like middle grade chapter books. And I was like, actually, you guys just need to hire Laura, and she will do it for
I
you.
love
yeah.
For
middle grade books
Well,
so
because the
much.
people who do like they love. I met a ton of people at Children's Institute, which is an American Booksellers Association, so indie bookstores across the country conference. It was held in Wisconsin in 2022 or 23, I believe. And it was just a room full of people who love reading kids' books. And I was kids lead at Boswell for a while. And um, yeah, just got to talk to other people who are like reading these. And I still pick up middle grade books every now and again.
They're
Not so
so
much that
good.
I'm not like in that section, but um, yeah, that's kind of I just had to put that out there before I forgot about
I
Warrior
appreciate
Cats.
that.
And
Beautiful.
I do think that the original series is very worth covering, the original six. Like, even Hank Green
Sold.
just made a video about that, about
That's
That's
like
why
he
I'm
when she
loved.
super interested.
Yeah.
Laura was like, I
So,
think we should cover him. And I was like, well, there's like 5 million books, so it would only be
Mhm.
the
And
original
there's a graphic
run.
novel series.
Like,
And like they're fairly old too, some like the
yeah,
original series, but the staying power of that series amazes me because like
yeah.
I'm working in the children's department some days at my library and there are a lot of kids that are checking these out and are very like into all the lore and everything. It
Yeah.
it fascinates me, honestly.
It's really incredible world building, and it's amazing that like, yeah, that's just like a little pocket intro to reading, and having so
Hmm.
many books in the series is a huge relief for parents because you don't have to like scramble to find out what your kid's going to read next, because like if they start
right.
on Warrior Cats, they're set for a bit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but anyway, just back to like the calculation thing, like it depends on, yeah, just like a lot of things that the buyers track number wise.
Sure.
And then sometimes if a bookseller really loves a book, we'll like beg and be like, please order quantity, put this on a display. No one knows about this book and they need to. And like, can we get quantity? So like quantity for a book, a lot of times for a new release. Um, like just your average new release book, not expected to be a huge hit, or like often like sequels to a series that are like, people are reading them, but they're not like hyper popular.
Hmm.
Will be like 1 to 2 copies.
Okay.
Like for fiction, usually like a new fiction release, maybe we'll get like 1 or 2 hardcovers. So quantity is like, oh, usually like 4 copies, and we put this on a table. So like anything above that is what I would call like quantity ordering. And
Okay.
so the sales history, the representatives, the bookseller reviews, and media coverage kind of all combine into. Um, and honestly, I'm pretty sure that sometimes the buyers do it on vibes. If they're like, this has an
Well, I was
excellent.
gonna ask what kind of role social media plays in like selecting things and like if you follow trends or not, like how you keep up with what's going on in like Book Talk and Bookstagram, or if you try to steer clear of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually based on like what the booksellers are tapped into.
Hmm.
And then like when you start getting a ton of requests for a book, that's the other method. So like, back in 2022, 23, Colleen Hoover was not on like our individual radars as booksellers, but we were getting so many, I will say, um, young white women
No.
who I know I'm like, is it offensive to describe the demographic
No,
coming in
no.
for
You
this
know what?
book?
As
It's
two
just
white
accurate.
women on this podcast
It's
listening
just
to you say
accurate.
that, you have our permission to
Okay,
just kind
yeah.
of go forth
And
and call us
like
out. So,
not to like tie it to anything additional. You can cut this part if you want, but like a lot of young white women from suburbs who like don't usually come into the bookstore, like they were starting to get into coming in person to the bookstore to pick up books, and Colleen Hoover got them there. And so we started getting quantity of Colleen Hoover books because people were buying them. So like often just people asking, and like libraries will get this too, with just people requesting a book. And we're like, oh, we got like 3 requests for this book in a week, and we only had 1 copy on the shelf. We should probably have in 3 copies. So,
Mhm.
I who
Like
have never
Freida
known
McFadden
men, like,
also.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Last year, a huge one was I Who Have Never Known Men. And that one, yeah, just had like a huge online trajectory, and was on our like top 25 bestsellers for weeks and weeks, like of our stores, not just nationally.
Sure.
And so it's like, hey, it's not necessarily a new release, but we've got to have quantity of it. So the way Boswell does that with paperbacks is we have 3 tables in front of the front desk. Some of it is new release paperbacks we've ordered quantity of. Some of it's quantity we just got to keep. Like Madeline
Hmm.
Miller, we
oh
got
yeah.
to keep.
Sure.
The Secret History, so many college freshmen just are coming in and they're like, I've heard of this and are just waiting to pick it up, you know? Um,
That's beautiful
and
because I mean you guys are
yeah,
close to like university, so that do and
yeah,
you are
Hmm.
close as a white woman in the suburbs. You are close for people who are in the suburbs.
yeah,
So
yeah. We're pretty around for like folks of all so like it's like, oh, well, maybe if someone heard about this book online and they weren't sure about picking it up, they see it right when they walk in the bookstore, it'll be like a sign and they'll pick it up and try it. So that's another way where it's like a mix of what we personally recommend and what is like selling to bring in money for the store.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I also know that you're a huge part of non-book related items because last time you were on, you discussed how you kind of do
Yes.
non-book. What does that usually look like in a bookstore where you're trying to find like obviously book selling is your primary goal, but like you also have to get these other things that people are interested in, like stickers and mugs, a chicken mug, which I own, but like
I know exactly which one. I think we
yeah.
talked about it last time.
Yep,
But
exactly.
so that's called sidelines.
Okay.
And that is just like non-book things for the bookstore. And actually, magazines used to be a really huge part of that
Mhm.
because bookstores would offer magazines because people would come in to pick up the magazine and then maybe they'd shop around for books. And magazines have really, print magazines has really fallen off. We still get folks coming in for them, but we don't like, we have a vendor that sends us a mix of stuff, so we don't necessarily control what we're getting apart from the really local ones. So it's a smaller magazine section. But people might come in for books and end up shopping around and be like, wait, I need socks for Father's Day. Father's Day is a big time of year for socks. Um, or like, my mug broke. Look at this new mug. Or
Mhm.
I always need a new mug, no matter what. Or this dish towel looks really cool. Um, because I'm handling a lot of those gift items, I'm always thinking about like, oh, this would make like such a cute little package. Like, I want to get this little notebook that has oranges on it and this like cinnamony candle and put them in a bag with Priory of the Orange Tree and make it a special
Mhm.
gift selection.
Cute.
I wish we had the capacity to do stuff like that. But because I'm always just making associations between those things in the books. But yeah, we work them into displays. They help fill corners so that they don't look empty when we're like filling a table with books and like putting some things between them. Puzzles are really huge.
Mhm.
Um, and one of my favorite musicians, Jeff Tweedy, actually went on that Subway Takes show
Oh yeah.
and said like, "Oh, fun socks are over. Why is it now that when you go to a bookstore, there are also fun socks? Like they used to be like this weird niche thing, and now they're not. You can get." And I was like, as someone who, I went to a concert of his, and I gave as a gift like to someone who could hand it to him backstage a pair of fun socks, and said like, as someone who like that's my
That's
job.
beautiful. Yeah, it's
That's my job. It's keeping us up, man. The
but
world we
guess
live
what? People
in.
are buying them. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sidelines, bookish gift things, paper products, like expanding into stuff beyond that. Kids' toys, especially,
Mm.
because like people come in a lot to look for birthday gifts, or activities for kids. So it really branches out from like really book related stuff to really just, stuff you might see more at a variety store,
Mhm.
kind of to fill in the space and to like help bolster book sales. The prices of books are rising. So someone who would like comes in expecting to spend a certain amount, they might not buy two books, but they might buy a book and a couple stickers, or they might
Mhm.
buy um, a book and a greeting card for an upcoming holiday. So yeah, I handle the like receiving gift items. I don't necessarily, I have some input, but I don't necessarily pick which things we order for the store. Jen is our sidelines buyer for that. And yeah, it just ends up being another source of income. There are some really great bookstores that have like sidelines that are really particular to them, and that's like where my brain is at, is like, oh, I just want everything to be like together on a theme. Like the Well-Read Damsel in Wauwatosa has such a great
Correct.
selection of like sidelines that are like all bookish themed and romance themed, a lot of
Hmm.
stuff from like local artists, that like is a very like, because it's like a smaller space, like a very curated collection that is like specific to that store. But being like a larger store and um,
Having
yeah,
a
just
plethora of genre. Well, you said something
yeah,
about like toys, and it like brought me back to Boswell's because I was there showing friends around, and there was a little
yeah,
kid holding a cat, and the parents were like, "We have to leave the kitty behind," and the
yeah.
cat just like kept ignoring them and going like, "Come on, kitty, meow," and
Oh my God, I
Oh,
love.
I was
I
like,
actually
"This is
keep a secret
beautiful."
stash of stickers at the front desk to help when a child is really upset at having to leave a
hmm
toy behind. I'm
Yes,
like, oh man, I gotta hang out with this cat puppet. However, are you interested in the
in
word of
this,
Bluey?
yeah.
Like, like
And who isn't interested in the word of
right?
Bluey?
That
So,
usually works. One time a kid lied to me and said no. And his dad was like, what are you talking about? You're obsessed with Bluey.
everyone
You
loves
love
Bluey.
Bluey. And the kid was like, I don't like Bluey. Like just embarrassed to tell me. And I
Yeah.
was like,
No,
come
you
on,
love
dude.
it.
Admit
I
it. You're
loved it as
part
an
of the
I
adult.
fandom.
I
I
love
watch it with my
Bluey. I'm not
nephew all
above
the
it.
time.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. Like modeling for parenting and good behavior,
Yeah.
I
Bluey
just
for
talked about it
adults.
recently on the podcast because I was watching it with my nephew and I was like just feeling so like many emotions like, oh,
Yeah.
I am doing a good job. Thank you for telling me that, Bandit. I do feel like I'm doing a good job as a human. Oh, I needed that today. But
That
on the
is,
opposite
yeah.
end of
Mhm.
like acquiring things, how do you know when to weed things out? Like if you're like
Ooh.
this hasn't
Mhm.
moved for a while or this isn't very popular, how do you know like when
Yeah.
it's time for it to move on and where do things go?
Yeah. So I'll do sidelines first because it's
Okay.
shorter answer. Most of the sidelines gift stuff we get is actually not returnable. So we have to, it's a little bit riskier. We have to kind of take a chance on getting stuff up front that'll sell. We usually get a bigger discount on it than we do from like books on average. But you're buying a ton of art from someone who makes stickers and pins. They don't have a in-person storefront. Like once those
Mm.
stickers and pins are made, like they are not going to take them back.
Yeah.
Um, when something like has been sitting unsold for like more than like a year and a half, we might mark it down. So like we'll cut the price and try to just break even on it, or even like take a little bit of a loss, see if someone will take it for
hmm
75% off.
Sure.
Um, for books and things that come from publishers that are returnable, generally, if we have quantity of something, if it hasn't sold while it's on a new release display, we'll usually return down to two copies. So we'll keep two copies,
Hmm.
send the rest back to the publisher.
Okay.
If something has been sitting on the shelf, and hasn't sold for a year, that might go back to the publisher. So I have folks who come in who are looking for books from the mid 2000s that like they think have gotten like great recommendations. And I'm like, yeah, they did, but no one else has asked for it or bought it in the last few years. And so we stopped regularly stocking it. As long as something's in print, we can still order it, but just for shelf space to make room for new things coming out, and like the like expansion of the book industry as a whole. Like we used to have way more seating at Boswell. We just have benches by the staff recs and regional areas
Mhm.
now. People are like, oh, what happened to all the chairs and couches? Initially, it was a COVID precaution, but the reason they haven't come back is because we filled in that space with more bookshelves just
Mm.
to be able to fit more things
hmm
coming out. Like the sci-fi and fantasy sections used to be so much more condensed. We like at different years had and didn't have a romance section that was its own thing. Now we have separate romance and romantasy sections.
Mhm.
Um, sections that used to be just a couple of shelves now require bookcases,
Hmm.
because genre fiction also is getting more popular. So yeah, for books, like there's usually a timeline for something depending on whether it's a new release. It'll will be more generous for books that have like, yeah, they have sold 10 copies. They haven't sold one in 6 months. We might give it a little bit more time versus we ordered this in as a new release. It hasn't sold a single copy in like 9 months. We might need to make space for something else.
Okay.
And that's going to be more of a concern with the genres that have like sections with more competitive space. So like romance and romantasy. And that's also part of why like bookstores that like romance bookstores are so important because not only can they like curate a selection, they can keep on the shelves things that like we don't have space for because we have romance and also cookbooks and also like uh children's books in Spanish and like
Hmm.
anthologies and tons of stuff to make space for. So I really appreciate how Boswell specifically has like always supported the idea of more bookstores around,
Yeah.
not as something that'll like take money away from us, but like that'll add to the literary community and the bookselling community
Yep.
in Milwaukee. Like it's such a relief to tell people like, hey, like, yeah, if you're looking for more of a selection, you can head down like just like 20 minutes away. Here's this one, and they have people like more people who might be able to recommend things to you, and like more indie authors
Hmm.
and like um things like that.
Yeah, a
So
rising
like,
tide lifts all the boats, so it's
Yeah.
good to
yes,
have lots of competition around.
yeah,
People
Right.
have we've become a society where people think that that's bad, but it's actually good.
yeah. And it's
Especially
like,
when it comes
hey,
to indie bookstores where like it's
yeah.
very specific, people who want to be there and be part of
Hmm.
the community.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
like Tosa's had a children's bookstore for a while, but like, oh, suddenly they have a romance bookstore that's geared toward adults. People who have been maybe e-reading or ordering books online for a while might discover the joys of browsing for books in person. And
Yeah.
then when they like are looking through romance books, they might be like, oh, you know what? I've kind of been thinking about this cookbook. And then instead of like ordering that online or going to like a Barnes and Noble, they might be like, there's that other indie bookstore. I really enjoyed shopping around here where like someone's talking to me, giving me recommendations. I might really enjoy going out there. So yeah, just I think it
Yeah.
just really benefits like bookstores to have more bookstores around. If another general interest bookstore opened like within a mile of us, I'd be like, okay, now you're just trying now
You're too
like
Right
close
next
to home.
door,
You're
like
too close
across
to
the
home.
block.
yeah, yeah, it's like we're the little bit of everything store.
Yeah.
So like, we are the alternative to Barnes and Noble.
Hmm.
But like there is not like a big box alternative to like Lion's Tooth, which has so many like graphic novels, zines,
Lion's
local
Tooth is
art,
amazing. Yeah.
incredible stuff in Bayview. Like, we're not their equivalent. We don't have the same selection. And like, we work with them for events or La
Hmm.
Revo Books, which does pop-ups and events. And so, yeah, just my little tangent on like, I've really appreciated being part of a bookstore that actively tries to partner with other bookstores and like
Yeah.
use our
Yeah.
like experience in Milwaukee and our event space because we have probably the most square footage of any non-Barnes and Noble bookstore in
Correct.
like this area of Wisconsin. And
That's actually, you're vibing totally with our questions because our next
yeah,
question was very much about small businesses and how they are the heart of the community. And it's so important
yeah,
to support them. And Boswell's does this a lot with author interviews. But can you
yeah,
tell everyone a little bit about like author interviews at Boswell, as well as like other programs that you do at the bookstore that you get involved
yeah,
with, even for children and young readers, just like, anything community based. So,
yeah. So we do have an events team now. Boswell actually, by like number of events, there are more events in a calendar year than there are days in a year. for
Hmm.
like the past few. Like
Wow.
we do so many because not all of them have to be in the store. We'll sell books at a UWM event. I was overjoyed to be a bookseller for UWM's recent event with Angela Davis.
Oh
I
my
was like
gosh.
floored.
Cool.
She smiled at me and
And
I'll
you
never
and
be
you
the
died.
same. Yeah, well, because all of her pictures, she's so serious. And
Yeah.
then in person, to like see her smile, I was like, I feel changed. I feel and like now I get to convince people to read Women Racing Class, and that's just a great night for me.
Beautiful.
Um, so, but because we get so many event offers, like we have to be like a little bit more choosy about which ones we take, which is also why having other bookstores nearby is so great because like more authors can come to
Hmm.
Milwaukee if we can say like, hey, we're booked on these nights, but you have a new graphic novel, like Lion's Tooth might be able to host you,
Hmm.
or you are a romance author, like here's the romance bookstore that like has done amazing events and will be able to host you.
Hmm.
Um, or for something else where it's like, oh, this bookstore got an author, they don't have the space for it, but the author is interested. We'll partner with that bookstore sometimes and split the sales and
Hmm.
host the event in our space so that we can, like, because Boswell can easily accommodate 100 people. I've seen maximum maybe 250, 300 because we all of our bookstores in the or bookshelves in the center of the store are on casters that we can move to the side and to other sections. It's wild to see it transform. Um, but yeah, so we sometimes like I actually have been really lucky. I have like begged for certain authors to come who have. So I've actually met
Can we
most
ask
of
which ones?
my
Okay.
yeah, I've met most of my like favorite authors from my teenage years, like
Oh,
because of Boswell events. Um,
beautiful.
in 2022, we had Rainbow Rowell,
Yep.
whose Carry On series came, like Carry On, the first book came out 2 weeks after I started working at the bookstore. I read it in a single night, the night it came out, and just have reread that book probably more times than any other. I just like revisited it throughout like my like teen years and young adulthood. Um, and we were able to host her for short story collection. And like I don't know, I just like I've like gotten a lot of gifts to my teen self. Maggie
I love that.
Stiefvater, who did the Raven Cycle, came for
Oh, cool.
her adult book, The Listeners. Um, I was so mad. They booked Hank Green for his first novel, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, but the event was 2 weeks after I left Milwaukee for
Oh
college. So
no.
I ended up going to that book event in New York. And sorry, sidetracking, but like Alexandra Rowland is another one. Oh my goodness. We worked with Awkward Nerd Events who they're on hiatus right now, but they did an annual book fair in Milwaukee. And we
Hannah and I went to one of
arranged,
those.
Yes, we did.
yeah,
Yeah.
we arranged a queer pirate boat adventure on the Milwaukee River
Yeah, I
where
remember
everyone,
that.
yeah, we all dressed as pirates and like had themed drinks and author readings. And Alex Rowland came in for that. We sold books for that. It was
Amazing.
absolutely amazing. Um, and then I've been able to do some virtual interviews as well with Freya Marsk and Everina Maxwell. And in-person interviews with Nevo, who's a Milwaukee-based author,
We had
We
them on
love
the,
incredible
Nevo.
yeah, we had her on
award-winning
the
fantasy author.
podcast. So
Yes,
good.
yes, I
Yes.
saw. Yeah, and I actually just got an arc of the new Nevo that's coming out later this year.
Amazing.
It sounds so so good. And Megan Giddings, who's in Minnesota, but like has amazing like literary speculative fiction. Um, yeah, not to just like name a ton of authors that I love, but like
Hey,
um
We dig it.
yeah,
Boswell's
like
also, you guys know what's up because like this is so very much high school Hannah, but I love Sarah Dessen, and I was just there, and you guys were like having an event with her coming up, and I was like,
Yeah.
Sarah Dessen is coming. That's like my high
Yeah.
school dream come true.
Literally, I'm like, how many readers
But
of the 2010s, like this is like she's like the key nostalgia figure for, so that's also
I
really
did
exciting.
I did what I called the Sarah Dessen summer, where I just listened to all of her audiobooks one
Oh
after
my
the other,
God.
and I rated them for the podcast. I have a blog post on it where I like did like a quick review of like, here's my rating top to bottom.
Wait, we actually might have to bring this in for the event. I have to find this and show our event team
I will
because
send it to you because
yeah.
it was the best time. And some of them, like, I mean, I was honest about them. So I think
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
showed it to her, then you were like, meet Hannah, I would be embarrassed because some of them I was like,
Yeah.
Sarah, what are you doing? But
And I'll be like
But
in the
just
front row,
the
like,
fact that it exists and that like the that you covered it is so cool.
yeah, so I'll send it. I'll send you a link of my blog post from my Sarah Dessen summer. But like, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's so cool. So
Yeah, so yeah, we get a mix. Sometimes authors themselves reach out. Oftentimes a publisher will be sending an author on tour and we can like say, hey, we want to be one of the tour spots. Here's our proposal for that. Or they can say, hey, we want you to be a tour spot. Are you interested in hosting this person? Or if you're like me, you beg and beg and beg and say, I'll do anything if you can can like heal my inner teenager by bringing Rainbow Rowell to the bookstore. And then they do, and I have the time of my life at a work event, which is, um, and yeah, just so many great things. And then like you get to discover people too, like Melissa Falaveno wrote a Northwoods Gothic, a little
Mhm.
Wisconsin thriller, Hemlock, and no
I
longer
meant
lives
to
in
go to that and
Wisconsin.
I missed it. So but I own the book. So
Nice. Yeah, but I was just like, oh man, like I think this person would be really cool to meet. And then like they're on tour. Can we have them at Boswell? And then reading the book and getting to talk to other people about the book. Um, it can be nerve-wracking when I really love an author. Or like depending on like, because sometimes when like a TV or internet personality has a book, they just, even if I'm not a fan of theirs, like on my own time, like not that I dislike them, but I just like don't follow them or like am not familiar with the fame. Like sometimes people will carry themselves in a way where it's like, oh, the confidence and the character is like so like outwardly charming where I'll be flustered. But yeah, I got really good at taking signing line pictures.
Hmm.
That's one of the things. So like we like to do author events as like the author talks or is in conversation with someone. Most, if not all of our events have a signing line afterward where we're expecting people to like want to take pictures with an author. Sometimes a bookseller will be assigned to that. When I was a teenager, maybe 2017, um, an author named Emily Giffen came to Boswell. She has a pretty huge following in
Hmm.
like fiction, romance.
Hmm.
Um, and I like didn't know anything about her or her books, but she like came in dressed beautifully, like makeup perfect, everything. And she was like, no, like I want my fans to love their pictures of this day and love their pictures
oh,
with me. This is how you take good phone photos. And like took me aside and was like, okay, you get vertical, you get top, and you get front, so that regard like whichever part of their face they like more, they're cool with it. And then you do one from the side and you can just go click, 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 say you look beautiful, and then give them back their phone. And I've been doing that ever since. And people are like, you're like amazing at that. And I'm like, it was like one conversation with an author who was like, wow, you
This is how
should
you
like,
do it.
thank
yeah,
you,
you
Emily
should
Yeah.
Giffen.
take fan pictures for me on my tour. And I was like, I'm literally in high school, but thank you.
Shout out to
Um,
Emily. You have changed Ollie's life forever. So
I
Emily
know.
Giffen.
And now a lot of people who get like their author pictures with me, I'll say like, listen, y'all got eyes closed. I'm doing this. If someone has like a really cute author interaction, like they say something really meaningful, the author gets up to hug them. I'll take candid pictures without being asked to. Um, So that's another part of it, that isn't necessarily like baked into like our event formula, but that I like doing when it comes up.
Well, this is my next question. So
Yeah,
you're really just kind of flowing from one thought into the next
let's
with what we're
go.
going with. So all of the events are really positive and everything, but I was kind of thinking we're like in a time where I feel like everyone is starved for genuine connections. So like these
hmm
physical interactions like this in these meeting places have become really sacred.
hmm
So this is maybe more of like an advice question, but like how do you build those relationships with
hmm
people and make your space welcoming?
Yeah. I actually think like one piece of this is a really good flow from that because I love overhearing people become friends in the signing line. Like when there's a long
Mhm.
signing line for an author, like you're going to be there several minutes, like people maybe chat with the people they came with. I have a good friend who has gone to events and will just like get into a deep conversation with whoever they're next to, like in waiting to meet the author. Um, and it's great because you're not just showing up to a place like, oh yeah, we like books. Lots of different people like books. For like author events where you're waiting in the signing line, like you obviously are interested enough to want to get a signature from the author or maybe have an
Mhm.
interaction with them. It is, you're in physical space together and you have at least one thing in common, which is that you
Yep.
want to talk to this author. You might have different feelings about that author or like what you're doing, but like you had the motivation to go out to a book event and like the desire to have an interaction that way.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think also another amazing thing about indie bookstores is like when people ask for recommendations, we go pretty hard. Like we will walk you over, talk you through. And I think this is like pretty common with like independent bookstores compared to others. Though I know some folks who like work at Barnes and Noble who are really great recommenders. It's not to diss that or their work at all. But the like really personal feeling of interacting with staff at an indie bookstore is definitely
Mhm.
something that like is intentional and like is cultivated and something that like you can see someone get better as a bookseller over time by like
Yeah.
how they learn to talk to people about books.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's another like way of like connection and understanding. Customers who I see who come back for recommendations from me, I'll call my regulars. Like those are like folks where um, I sometimes they'll have to remind me, but I'll remember like, oh my gosh, you came in to get a book for your son's 15th birthday. Did he end up liking it? Oh my God, he loved it. Here's four more for every holiday gift you need. But yeah, so just from the working side of it, you get to connect with people a lot, and that makes up for the like side of it where interacting with a wide variety of people, you're also going to get some negative interactions.
Mhm.
Um, but I've also seen people change over time. There's a particular customer who used to be so rude and like abrasive. And then, like for years coming into the bookstore, like every few months. And then, like, had like a really good interaction conversation with the bookseller. And then, like, over time, just started having really good interactions with multiple staff or like seeking
Mhm.
multiple staff members out. She might not be super nice to everyone there, but now when she comes in and says, Ollie, I'm not dreading the next 10 minutes, I'm like,
Yep.
listen up, what are you here for? Like what can I do for you? Um
Sometimes it just
and
takes like some one small thing to click. Maybe it was like one of
yeah,
your coworkers having like mentioning something about a book that they were looking at or something like that.
yeah,
I feel like it because I also have worked in
yeah, the
customer service
library,
for a
yeah.
really long time and now I work at the library. So it's I am totally picking up what you're saying where it's like you can have these customers that you know are difficult or
hmm
are like you kind of want to steer clear of them, that type of thing,
hmm
and just let them do their thing. But sometimes you have some person that will click with them and it does like kind of turn
hmm
things around.
yeah. And sometimes like you just adapt to what they need. So like, being able to um like metaphorically speak their language if they're like talking about things in a certain way. Obviously with like aggressive or abusive or like offensive behavioral language, that is not what happens.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
if someone's just like, listen, they clearly care a lot about this kid they're shopping for.
Hmm.
They're not necessarily using the right words to like describe how that kid is doing reading wise, or like, don't know that much about their interests and are like kind of expecting us to like give them a formula that'll get the kid to have a book to read. Um, and sometimes it's just like, okay, I'm going to respond to the language that you're giving me. You mentioned this. This comes up in this book. Um, and, as staff, we're definitely, we like to greet people coming in and are encouraged to do so and to have those connections to you know, like bolster our bookstore as a community space.
Hmm.
And then part of it is just I think like anyone who's worked customer service, like you get better at reading people and interacting with people.
For sure.
The more that you do that, the more strangers you encounter, the more you know how to interact with strangers. And yeah, I think also being on a block that has like multiple coffee shops and a movie theater and restaurants, like we get folks who are like coming in to go out to dinner and might find book things or like are browsing ahead of a movie, or getting coffee with a friend, go pick up a book, or getting a book and then they go sit down and have a coffee.
Hmm.
So it's just nice to be like on a street with a lot of different like sort of like third spaces, and then like close by to ones that do not require you to spend money. Obviously, you don't have to spend money to enter the bookstore, but like it is a store. We are selling things. So um like that is more the like it is definitely a like store vibe, but we're also close to the East Branch of the Milwaukee Public Library, which is
Hmm.
a like fantastic place to hang out, and multiple parks and the university and just like so many
And
great
the lake, like you guys
spaces.
are pretty close to the
Yeah.
lake, so yeah.
hmm And
I
like
know I've
multiple
mentioned
bus
libraries a
routes.
lot
Yeah.
during this interview, but I do feel like libraries and indie bookstores kind of are like cousins or
Yes,
like best
definitely cousins.
friends.
Like we're in the same family. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think they both just play a really important role in communities. And Hannah and I were just recently talking about how the two are kind of, like I said, cousins really, because they
Yeah.
work off of each other and work with each other often where they can support different roles in communities. So
Yeah.
it's neat that you're mentioning, not that far from the local library and
hmm
you can offer things at your bookstore that the library can't offer and vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually the Milwaukee Public Library filmed a one of their famous videos with us.
TikToks.
Yeah, their beautiful, wonderful TikTok page about someone who was really sad at like their time with the book being up and they had to return the book. And then they came to the bookstore and filmed that person like me finding the book in the bookstore and being able to take it home forever because they love it so
Yep.
much.
Oh, that's
Um,
lovely.
yeah, so like we're definitely in relationship. And also I will say bookstores are like bookstores build a lot of librarians.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
lot of um, folks who were once coworkers with me have like left to work in libraries or like were working at Boswell while completing library science degrees.
That's awesome.
So like that's a really cool part of it. Like the um, sort of less cool part of it is like with small businesses, the way that America works, things like healthcare, like long-term benefits, things like that can be difficult. But libraries are usually larger, the type of careers that you can,
Hmm.
it's like, we have two people who buy books who are most likely going to be doing that for quite some time, and like a
Yep.
store owner and then booksellers. And so like there aren't, and for smaller bookstores, even fewer like opportunities for
Hmm.
advancement. Um, so I know a lot of folks who, when they like if they're the primary income of their household, like when it's time to like save up for big like purchases, car, home, if they're like expecting a kid. And it's hard to do those things solo on bookseller money.
Mhm.
And so the libraries are also in relationship with us because, like, as larger institutions and mostly public institutions, they offer the kind of jobs that people who have the like skills and knowledge and interest related to book selling are able to shift into and still like be in the world of books and be connected to all of that while also possibly like being able to um, support themselves more. Yeah, not to like, I'm not trying to like be negative about, but there's a
No,
reality
I
that
think
like
that's important
bookselling,
Yeah.
context
yeah,
because there are a lot of people who I think have this like romanticized view of being an indie bookstore owner
yes,
or a librarian or whatever. And I I think that you have a lot of people who think, oh, well, it's just be so fun and it's just,
hmm
sitting around and reading and all
yeah,
this. And I don't know that a lot of people understand how difficult running a small business is, that a
yeah,
lot
Mhm.
of it is accounting, honestly. And you have people
yeah,
who are not accountants and are booksellers who are trying to then be accountants also and deal with
yeah,
accountants and try to figure out how to stay ahead of margins and all sorts of
hmm
things like that, how to figure out what trends to follow,
yeah,
on and on and on. And I think it's much more complicated than people think.
hmm
And then you add in like the community aspect of it as well, where,
yeah,
we can, I don't think it's even really that necessary for us to delve into how places like Boswell's are supporting the local community
hmm
and places like Amazon are not.
yeah,
And how if your kid's soccer team needs a sponsorship for their team for the year for their t-shirts, Boswell's is much more likely to do that than Amazon.
Actually,
And
we don't do sponsorships.
well,
To do sponsorship, like you bigger businesses able to do sponsorships,
Yeah, very
okay,
but
so
fair.
but
I'm
like
from
more
a pretty
likely to
small
support
rural
that
town.
team with like an
Yes.
event or
Yes.
something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
or like be a space for them. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I'm from a rural area, so a lot of times we get like our t-ball teams that are soccer
Mm,
teams that'll come in and they'll say, "Oh, could we get some money for from you guys, and we'll put your business logo on the back of our shirt."
yeah.
And so we'll do that type of thing. And then they use the donation towards keeping the program alive. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's much more to a small business and it's much more
Yeah.
complicated. But even like donations like that and setting up these events to support communities, it's
Yeah.
very intensive,
Yeah.
time intensive. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of different moving parts and also money. Like people think that
Yes.
you're just doing this for free. It's like, no, we have, if we set up an event, we have to pay people
hmm
to run the event. We're paying for other things to be at the event. And it's
Yeah.
more complicated than just, oh, we're doing this for a local group.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you're a solo bookseller, like running your own shop, like you can decide how much of your time because like you are taking the profits yourself. If you have 20 booksellers, you have to figure out like what is going to work so that you can pay people, like what is going to be to like bring in enough money to account for like the hourly wages of people who are
Mm-hmm.
doing that task.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I mean, that's the thing is a lot of people have that romantic view. They forget that a bookstore is not just a wonderful place where you can recommend books to people, because that is part of the job,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
you are working retail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You gotta be at a register, check people out, pay attention to
Mm-hmm.
money stuff,
Yeah.
and like keep an eye on the front of the store, and
Yep.
like if someone looks like they need something, ask them and like be
Mm-hmm.
paying attention. And I think a lot of people have an idea, and I think that fiction about small town bookstores is a little bit to blame for this.
Sure.
That like you can be working at a bookstore and part of that job will be like sitting and reading at the
Mm-hmm.
counter. And it's like, frankly, we just are never like, we don't have the like
The capacity, the
capacity,
like you guys are
or
working.
just like we're
Yeah.
too busy for that.
Yeah.
Like maybe
I
20
also
years
think people
ago.
discount like how hard it is to like stay focused on a book and then be
Yeah.
stopping and starting
Yes.
constantly if you're helping people. Like that is very difficult.
Yeah.
And at certain points you're just like, I can't read this right now because
Well,
I'm too
Yeah.
busy.
Like,
and I
listen, have I picked up some pages while there's been a blizzard and two people in a
Sure.
store? Absolutely.
right.
But I have also seen like a lot of people say like it's their dream job. And it's like, it might be a dream location for you to be in,
Right.
but the work of like drudgery of like shelving and putting things away correctly and checking people out of the register and yeah, like being on your feet for an extended
Mhm.
period of time, being at a cash register and having to pay attention to all the steps of that, like
Yeah.
is usually not part of the fantasy.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, can we at the start of every school semester and summer, we get tons of calls coming in. And
Mm.
it's like, hey, we'll look at resumes and such, but like, you can really see how many folks who are like, oh, what's the perfect job to have as a college student in Milwaukee? And it's working at the bookstore. And it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
for some people that might be a good fit, but like we're not, talk about books and hang out job.
Right.
We
Yeah.
are that's one of the services we provide,
Hmm.
but you're getting paid to help run a business.
Yep.
Right. No, and I think that's
Yeah.
why, I mean, that's why we wanted you on because I think we were so
It's important to
fascinated.
talk about that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
important to talk about and get a peek behind the curtain of what the actual
Hmm.
day-to-day
Yeah.
function of an indie bookstore is and what creates
Hmm.
things like Indie Bookstore Day and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, that's going to be different for. Oh yeah,
how
I
can
was
our
just
listeners
that's
like support you on Indie Bookstore Day and like
yeah.
year round? What are the
Yeah,
best ways to do
so
so?
for me, every day is Indie Bookstore Day,
Beautiful.
because I work at one. But Independent Bookstore Day is also always a Saturday in April. It was established as like a way to kind of resist the like chain store like Target, Walmart, and like online Amazon like takeover of the book industry
Mhm.
and to encourage people to shop locally. So in the similar vein to Record Store Day, which is encouraging people to go in person to their local record stores for music and related things. And publishers and organizations started doing limited releases, like to make it an even more special event. There was one year where there was a Stephen King exclusive, and Corker will always tell the story of how people were lined up outside the bookstore for like an hour before opening, and a guy like slammed his hands on the window and said, "Give me the King," and like just so people can get really excited. And there have been years where there have been exclusives that I've been really into as well. Um, but yeah, it is a day to celebrate like small community businesses and like the wider literary community. And it's also an amazing time community wise because you see how many people show up and it's like the number of people that show up the week before Christmas. It
Mm.
like which is like the busiest time of year typically for American bookstores. And so it's like in one weekend, we might sell as many books as we expect to in like a 2 week period, typically during like a different time of that month. Um, and this year, a lot of bookstores, including all the ones I've mentioned so far, like Lion's Tooth, Well Read Damsel, um, are doing like brick and mortar bookstores are doing an indie bookstore passport program for southeastern Wisconsin, northeastern Illinois. There are, I believe, 25 total. If you visit any bookstore, you can get a passport. You spend $15 at any bookstore and you get a stamp when you're getting checked out on your passport and sometimes free goodies. Boswell has an exclusive sticker. Um,
Mm.
and then there are like you can turn in your passports at the end of the month. You don't have to do this all on Indie Bookstore Saturday. It's through the month of April. Once you've visited the bookstores you're going to visit, you can turn in your passport, and then depending on how many bookstores you visited, you'll be entered into like drawings for different prizes.
Amazing.
And I've seen so many people come in the first few weeks of April, like with their indie bookstore day passports. Like it's been so cool to ask them like which stores they visited so far, if they're on a road trip, folks who are like, yeah, we were visiting family and we're from Chicago and we're up here for the weekend and we were gonna like hit the Milwaukee stores and then like a couple on the way back. And it's really to make a holiday of it and to make to give people like a purpose to go to the bookstore. Like
Mhm.
um, like a lot of holidays, like birthdays, are like you have a purpose to give your friend a gift.
Mhm.
So that thing you've been thinking of doing for them for a long time, like you have a date to attach to it. You can give your friend gifts at any time of the year, but on their birthday, it is reminding like the people who care about that friend to like come together and do that. And so that's kind of Indie Bookstore Day is we love when you visit any time of year. But if you have been like waiting for like the reason to go out, fun activities and prizes and giveaways on Independent Bookstore Day are a great reason to like go out and gather at bookstores and um, yeah, just really experience that.
That's amazing. And are there any books this year that have been that you want to see get a little bit more love that haven't, that people can pick up on
Ooh,
Indie Bookstore Day?
okay. That have been like more of the, oh, you know what? There's a book that's being billed as romantasy, but it's not really like books in that genre. It's called The Wolf and His King by Finn Longman. And it puts the medieval and medieval romance. Like the term
Mm.
romance as like a literary category had a different meaning in the medieval period. This is a story based on a medieval lay, like a poem story that is like the first sort of like werewolf novel.
Hmm.
And this is a book based on that, and it just hits those themes to like folks who are into the classics, who are like medieval classics, and if you loved Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, or uh, just medieval vibes. It is really immersive. The author clearly did their research. It's sort of under the radar, but the um, you know, like queerness inherent to like the social norms of certain classes in the medieval period and like also a queer relationship are like central to the novel, but it really is, I don't know, it's just so amazingly done, and I don't think it fits with the romantasy category. I think it's there because technically there is magic and there is romance, but it's just so well constructed. And for people who like folkloric fantasy, historical, that's one that I really enjoyed this year, that I would love to see like more people get behind. Um, and I'm actually looking at my little list right now because, God, I read so many things that sometimes I do have to keep track. Um, a book that came out last year called A/S/L by Jean Thornton. I'm reading right now for a book club I'm in. It is amazing literary fiction about three queer teenagers who were going to create the best video game ever when they were internet friends in 1998. 20 years later, like, haven't contacted each other since then, and are all living really different lives, unknowingly really close to the locations that their like internet friends that they had these really intense teen relationships, late night conversations, like creative project they were working on together also ended up in. So I'm really loving that. And it's also tough because I read ahead a lot. So like the book two books I'm most excited about right now do not come out for several months.
Mm.
But I am looking at what is available now. Oh, the Amal El-Motar short story collection, Seasons of
Hmm.
Glass and Iron. That's a short story collection where there's truly something for everyone. There's literary, speculative, um, like shorter, longer short stories. And they are all these stories about like that, like really, I don't know, they're the thing that ties them together is women. It's just like the like amazing women. And I was not always a short story reader, but yeah, I got into it with an author who I really liked and then ended up really loving. And just, like what's not getting love? I'm looking through my recently read um one more
Even
from
if it's
last
getting a
year.
ton of love and you're just like, no, guys,
Okay.
just go buy it on Indie Bookstore Day.
Okay.
I will open it
Um
up for you.
Absolutely wild book if you're a hardcore sci-fi fantasy reader is The Works of Vermin by Kieran Enns. It's on my
Hmm.
recommendation shelf, so we will have copies for Indie Bookstore
Perfect.
Day. Um, the vibes are like Rococo, but also sewer punk, but also
Interesting.
opera, like
Love it.
actual like operatic structure, but also like class war. It is the kind of book where you get 70% of the way through. You realize everything. You immediately want to go back and reread the last like 70% of the book, but you can't because that's also the exact moment that everything is happening so fast that like
You got
you
to keep
cannot you
going
cannot
forward.
you cannot stop. And I think actually Harrow the Ninth is a book that
Mm,
also does that for me. And where I'm like, as soon as the realization is made and I want to go
you're
back, I
just,
can't.
I know. You're just
Um,
sitting there like, I guess I just move forward and I just reread it
yeah.
later.
Yes, exactly that. Just like took over my brain in a lovely way, and I think just is really incredible on a craft level. Um, and Notes from a Regicide is now out in paperback, and that was one of my favorite books last year. Just like literary speculative fiction, complicated artists, and not just chosen family, but chosen parenthood. And a like um, a couple who are trans artists who fled um, the city whose revolution they were part of,
Oh,
adopt a trans kid who's, looking for a home. And um, the narrator is that kid, both going through his adopted father's like journal from the time of the revolution and like the story of how his adopted parents like met and fell in love and were involved in like a wild historical event and the his own memories of being raised by them. And it's just so beautifully done. If you're okay with speculative fiction, I think like even folks who don't normally go towards sci-fi fantasy would enjoy it.
mhm.
um it's like kind of maybe thousands of years in the future. It has sort of a Disco Elysium vibe of like it seems like it came from our world, but there's you don't know exactly how long it's been since our modern day, or like whether the changes were like sci-fi or magical or what's happening. But is just yeah, really, really beautifully done.
And you said that was
Um,
notes from a
Notes
regicide?
from a Regicide, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and yeah, if you want to, if you need a feel good, because I've listed some intense ones so far. Cat Sebastian is known for queer historical romance.
Mm.
Um, the first contemporary romance novel from that author is called Starshipped, and it is about actors on a sci-fi TV show, sort of Star
Oh,
Trek-esque,
Cool.
beautiful.
whose characters have been shipped online by like a subculture, um,
I love that.
who have hated working with each other, but when one of them decides to leave the show, they need to sort of um, pretend to be on good terms so that they don't
Mm.
get blacklisted by the industry as difficult to work with.
Oh, interesting.
And then, spending time with people, you learn more about them, you discover more about their lives, maybe even people you've known for years and years. Very sweet, really well done OCD representation. I've
Oh,
struggled with OCD for as long as I can remember, and the way that that point of view is handled, I think, really covers it. It's like a very small part of the book, but I was just like so appreciated that the character mentioned how hellish it is to approach exposure response prevention therapy,
Oh,
which is like the primary like therapeutic treatment for OCD. It's like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to confront the fact that I need these cabinets lined up a certain way. I'll do everything in my power not to confront that because it sucks. And if you just need a feel good, it's a great for a romance reader, for someone who doesn't typically like romance, there's like so much emotional depth and like, sort of commentary on like the modern like celebrity landscape of like, not huge celebrities, but like, oh yeah, like everyone consumes media and like even people who try not to have feelings about the people who make and star in that media. And yeah, it was well done. And romance isn't necessarily my main genre, but I really greatly enjoyed that one. So,
no, that's
um,
amazing.
and then as we mentioned before, Nevo is an amazing author and local. And
Hmm.
I would love to see people picking up
Which one?
the
What?
oh
Which
for
one?
Nevo books. I would love to see people picking up City and Glass.
Thank you. I was
Um,
waiting for that one. That was
yeah,
my
okay,
favorite
good.
read last year. I was like, if Ollie does not say the city
I
in
know. Well,
glass, I will
because a
throw this
lot of
laptop
people
across the room.
are familiar with like the Singing Hills cycle is their
Hmm.
Hugo Award winning series, but City and Glass also is just such a fantastic standalone, and I would love to see more people um,
It's like one of my
getting into
all-time
it.
favorites now.
Oh yeah.
I loved it so much. I think it's one of the best books I've read.
It is truly incredible, and I am like so like it's wild to me that I can just like see Nevo around Milwaukee,
Oh yeah.
and
So
that's an
wild.
experience I can have.
He is
Um,
weirdly
She's
like the
she's
chillest
too open.
person
She's too
ever.
open about which
yeah,
library she works or they work
I
at because I'm just
know.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
dude,
yeah.
I could just go see you whenever I want to. You're too accessible.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, it's just so hey, Milwaukee, we have an amazing local fantasy author with amazing books and um just an across the board indie bookstore day recommendation. Get things from staff recommendation shelves.
Oh,
Get
beautiful.
things that are like blind date with a book that are like personalized recommendations.
I got one
We
from you
do,
recently,
yeah,
so
I
yeah.
think we do pretty good at them. Like we write actual recommendations of like, hey, pick this up. This is who we think it's for, not just the tropes that are contained within the book.
Hmm.
And yeah, whichever bookstore you go to, staff recommendations, blind date books, look for the things that like you can't find elsewhere.
Hmm.
And that is like, because that's also like part of what indie bookstore is for, is recognizing those things that make indie bookstores special. So wherever you head on indie bookstore day for during indie bookstore month, or just in general, if you're heading down, that's the stuff that we really appreciate is when people are interacting with us booksellers, looking at our recommendations, looking at like what we as a store have to offer. Because yeah, we do put a lot of thought into it, into trying to make things good for people. So yeah.
That's amazing. Well, Ollie, I mean, we usually ask what you're reading, watching, or enjoying, but we
Oh
just
God.
got all of
Yeah, you
that.
got
So-
you got the you got the
But thank
yeah.
you so much. Everyone, go support Boswell Books, especially on Indie
Yes.
Bookstore Day. Celebrate the birthday
Yes.
party. I call it my Christmas. So we're
Yeah.
here for it on the podcast. Boswell's is in Milwaukee. Check the show
Yeah.
notes and we will throw the address in there so you can throw them
Yeah.
support. But you can also support it via
Libro FM.
bookshop.org or Libro FM. So
Yeah.
definitely check those out if you need to, if you're
And
not
if you're
near
not located
Boswell.
in Milwaukee, check out your local indie bookstore. Maybe they are
Mhm.
participating in some kind of passport program in their area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
IndieBound, which does the map of indie bookstores across the United States, will actually tell you which ones are closest to you by your zip code and
Oh,
which ones have an indie bookstore like special program.
this is why you
So
get
I
Beautiful.
will
pro
I
on
will
the
give
Indie
you
Bookstore episode.
yeah. I'll give you a link to that for the show notes and a link to
Great.
the passport program that is specific to Wisconsin for everyone
Beautiful.
Great.
because Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on and letting me ramble for so long.
Oh, thanks
Oh,
for
I
being
mean, this is
here.
my life. I could go on about it
you
forever.
are,
So,
I said you are welcome anytime. We'll have to have you
yeah.
I
on
think
for
we're gonna
another
just play like a speed round of like give me Rex.
that will be the Christmas episode. We're just going to make you come back on for the bonus episode, and we're like, what
Ooh.
about Easy Beaver, the book about beavers? What would you just make you give
Ooh.
us
Or you could
recommendations?
have me do like your family members, like the difficult people to shop for.
Yes,
That's what I study
yes.
for. I
Oh,
look through those. I look through those. So,
well, you guys might see Ollie back on for the Christmas eps.
yeah. And if you like hearing me, you can come talk to me at Boswell too. I'm there 5 days a week,
Yes.
almost every Saturday. If there's a particular, if you like a weekend bookseller, Saturday is my weekend day that I sell books, and obviously love talking about it. And yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm
Of
so
course.
grateful
Thanks for
to,
being here.
yeah, be able to chat with y'all.
And everyone, go follow us at OWWR Pod on all the social
Hmm.
platforms and check us out over at Boswell because you know I'll be shopping there.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
Bye.